Hello, good morning and welcome to the Fin Business News channel. We are here at Money 2020 and an exciting morning here. We are talking to a whole lot of interesting experts globally, and with me is an interesting expert from the region, Varun Mittal, who is heading the FinTech partnerships at Asia Pac for ENY. Welcome, Varun.
Thank you, Varun.
So, Varun, we have been talking a whole about the kind of fintech revolution, the disruptions that are taking place in this region. Can you just share with us the perspective about how this particular market is looking like from the fintech disruptions perspective? What are the opportunities in this market? What are the pockets where it has been really very lucrative for people to look at?
Absolutely. So one thing to look at from ASEAN's perspective, it's a 600 million people market, 10 countries, very fast growing, extremely digitally savvy population which moved to the smartphone generation 3G, 4G straight, so they leapfrogged the population. Very strong local banks which emerged very strongly after the Asian financial crisis. So we have local strong banks along with a lot of global banks which presence here. There's a strong financial services ecosystem. Being trading hubs in a lot of these areas, they have been accustomed to collaborating globally. Regulators who are very open to support financial inclusion, support regulatory experiment with sandboxes. So in most of the markets, we already have regulatory sandboxes in place with strong support on how do we enable local and global fintech ecosystems. So from that perspective, we look at this is probably one of the very few regions where as a region, you have a range of opportunities at different levels of maturity. So for a global fintech who is keen on looking to these markets, it's not that it's this or that. You have a range, a different level of maturity from a much financial inclusion driven Cambodia, Laos to Singapore, which is very close to some of the developing markets, to the middle of the spectrum with Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines. So we have a range. So we have different dishes available, different layers, different sectors, and there's a huge underserved population which is yearning for solutions and ideas from local and from globe. So from that perspective, it's the place to be.
Excellent. I think you gave an overall good buffet package of what is available in this market.
It's an a la carte actually.
Okay.
So you can pick dishes depending. You want to do POS in an emerging market. You want to do a capital market robo-advisory in developed market. So no matter how niche, how granular you want to go, we have a market for you.
Interesting. So out of these markets, the entire, the spread of markets that we have, which are the markets where you see a lot more opportunities and a lot more of action, especially from the fintech perspective?
So the way we look at in these markets, there is action everywhere. It's a question of how do you keep pace with that action. The drivers of the action are slightly different. For example, financial inclusion probably would be a driver in, let's say, Vietnam or Indonesia. Singapore, you will see a lot more wealth, capital markets driven pieces because it's slightly more developed piece, and there are most people already have bank accounts in probably Singapore or Malaysia. So the way we look at it is each of the markets have their own specialities where the action is. So probably in Vietnam, for example, you would not see a lot of capital management and robo-advisors with sophisticated wealth products coming up in Cambodia or Laos, for example.
Correct.
So that's why each market has action. It's the stage of action. So growth stage, early stage, and sector would be different. But that's where we have a spread of action across, and there is something for everyone.
Interesting. So you were speaking about the regulators, okay, the sandboxes and stuff. I know that MAS has been taking a forefront when it comes to giving a whole lot of encouragement to the fintech sector and bringing in newer technologies to the sector. Which other regulators have been forthcoming and been sharing quite a lot of great ecosystems for the industry to thrive,
Sure.
especially into the fintech space?
Sure. So one like disclaimer there. So having more companies in a sandbox is not necessarily a good or bad thing. Every country has their own way of approaching what comes inside a sandbox. And that's the same thing in ASEAN. So In Malaysia, we have seen a lot of action in terms of sandbox, and there are multiple different sandboxes for different categories. We've seen sandbox in Indonesia, which first phase, they focused on P2P. That was the first candidates to go inside sandbox. So every country defines what is the priority for them to slightly open up. Thailand has a few for banking, for digital KYC, they have that. So every country has their own areas which they want to experiment, which they want to look into those. So which is why everyone is trying, as I said, everyone has different priorities. People have different action areas, and the regulators are going after that. So regulators have to look at it from a very different perspective. But what I want to clarify is, we should not aim for, will we have 50 companies in sandbox this year? See, a company goes in sandbox when the existing regulations cannot cover for it.
Okay.
Ideal scenario, everyone knows what they can and cannot do, and they don't need to go into a sandbox. Okay. A sandbox is an exception, not the norm.
Okay, interesting.
So that's something we need to view at lens. So sandboxes are there for a reason. They should be there, but the KPI of sandbox is not the number of people going into it. It should be how relevant are they for the ecosystem, and can the existing laws and scenarios already handle the law? Ideal world, you should have zero participation. Ideal world, you should have zero people in sandbox.
Interesting perspective. I think it was a little different from all those perspectives that I have come across, especially from the sandbox things.
See, it's simple, right? Again, imagine, right? Do you have a sandbox for aeroplanes? Either an aeroplane can fly or it cannot fly with passengers. It's simple. Do you have like, you can fly with 500 passengers, but not 501 passengers? You don't have that with an aeroplane.
Correct. So it's very digital.
It's very defined, right? And again, there is a way. Planes constantly keep on innovating. It's not that the planes are same as they were 10 years, 15 years ago. They're innovating. So the way I'm looking at it, it's an exception. Yes, because technology is moving so fast, business models are moving so fast, so there needs to be a place to handle those exceptions. But these are exceptions, not the norm.
Interesting. So when it comes to RegTech, how much has the penetration been for RegTech in this market?
See, everything which used to be technology and compliance is RegTech now. So there is not penetration, not penetration. It's a concept. People are looking at how do we use technology to do it better, faster, cheaper. There are financial institutions who are embracing it. Theoretically, all digital KYC initiatives are also RegTech in a way. So we see strong push towards it from that customer onboarding, ongoing diligence, due diligence on the customer, because financial institutions want to be able to onboard more customers faster, cheaper, in a more scalable way. So that is one of the most active areas. And how can you increase the speed and reduce the cost of AML, CFT, and all of those compliance processes? Those are the key areas. Regulatory reporting automation is one area we are seeing more action also. Some regulators are looking at, can we create a utility for reg reporting? Because all banks have to do similar reporting. That's not a competitive advantage per se. Can a bank A do reg reporting better than bank B? You can only do it faster or cheaper, but end of the day, you have to submit the similar data to go to the same regulator who is going to analyze it in a similar way.
Correct.
So, is there a space for reg reporting utilities?
And the last question in this is, which are the 5 trending technologies you see that would make a mark in this region, especially from the fintech perspective, from the bank's perspective, and from the investor's perspective?
First one, digital KYC.
Okay.
Digital KYC and customer onboarding is one. Second, I would say as AI and machine learning, because there is a lot of noise and buzzwords, but actual implementation of use cases along with ability to audit those decisions. My third pick would be B2B use cases of distributed ledger.
Okay.
I'm very specifically saying B2B cases because there are scenarios where this technology and this kind of databases and data structures are valuable for banks to have internal deployments or have specific use case driven bilateral or multilateral deployments instead of going after setting up full networks. Fourth one, I would say client and cybersecurity. For securing your for your own databases, old systems is easy. Ensuring that customers have security on their devices, because now they're consuming most of the services on their mobile devices. How do you ensure they have security at the receiving end of the services. That would be, in my opinion, the fourth
one.
piece. And the last piece I would look at is how do you take paper out from the system? I'm not going after robotic automation or something. I like digitization. Let's do digitization first, you can bring automation later. But if you do not have digitization, automation won't happen. People are jumping to automation. They're not solving digitization first.
Great, interesting insights, Varun. That calls for a real good transformation, elevation, and innovation.
Absolutely.
All the three put together to take the banks to the next journey.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for
Thank
all
you.
your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.